Christmas Eve found her awake because hunger would not let her sleep. The shack creaked in the wind like an old man clearing his throat, each growing a reminder that nothing solid stood between her and the cold. Snow sifted through a split in the roof and melted against her hair, damp and icy. She did not brush it away. She no longer wasted strength on small discomforts. The stove sat dark and empty. No flour, no beans, no coal, only the iron smell of cold and the faint sourness of her own breath. She was 23 years old and already felt older than the land. Her name was Eleanor Price, though no one here had ever spoken aloud. The letters that brought her west had promised a home, a husband with land, a future shaped by honest work. She had crossed 2 states clutching those words like scripture. When she arrived, there had been only this shack in silence. The man who sent for her had not come. Neighbors passed without stopping. Weeks turned thin. So, did she? Outside, the plains lay flat and pale, moonlight shining dull on the snow. A wolf cried far off, lonely and sure. Eleanor pulled her shawl tighter, fingers numb, and stared at the wedding dress hanging from a nail. It was still white, still hopeful, still useless. She thought of Christmas mornings back east, of bread and noise and warmth. Out here, Christmas meant nothing. The frontier did not keep holy days. A sound cut through the wind. Hoofbeats. Slow, careful. Eleanor's heart stumbled. Riders came in 2 kinds. Neither was kind. She reached for the poker beside the stove, knowing it would do little. The horse stopped. Silence pressed hard. Then a knock struck the door, firm enough to mean intention, not pleading. She did not answer. The knock came again. A man's voice followed, low and steady. "Ma'am, open up." Her legs shook as she stood. She unbarred the door finger's width. Cold rushed in, sharp as knives. A man filled the opening, tall, broad-shouldered, his coat rimmed with frost. He looked about 35, face cut by wind and years, eyes pale and alert beneath a pulled-low hat. A rifle hung easy at his side. "You alone?" he asked. "Yes," she said, then hated the weakness in it. He studied her, the bare room behind her, the empty stove. His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be. I didn't ask for her." "I know," he said. "You didn't." Snow began to fall thicker. He glanced back at the dark. "Get your things." "I have none." "Get what you can carry." She shook her head. Pride flared brittle and useless. "I'm staying." He met her gaze without blinking. "No, you're not." They stood like that, the cold breathing between them. Eleanor searched his face for cruelty or want and found neither, which frightened her more. Men who meant harm often smiled. He did not. "My husband will come," she said, though the lie tasted old. The man exhaled once. "He won't." The words landed heavy. She felt something inside her give, a thread snapping. "You don't know that." "I do," he said. Name was Thomas Reed. Ordered supplies through Fort Laramie. Died of fever 6 weeks back. Her knees weakened. She gripped the doorframe. "Then why am I here?" He hesitated, and she saw regret flicker. "Because the frontier is slow with mercy." The wind moaned around the shack. Eleanor laughed, a thin sound. "So you come to finish it?" "No," his voice roughened. "I've come to stop it." She closed her eyes. Hunger surged, dizzying. The world tilted. She swayed and would have fallen if he had not caught her. Strong hand, steady, careful. He set her on the stool by the stove, moved with quiet efficiency. From his coat, he produced a tin and held it to her lips. Broth. Warm. She drank without thinking, tears cutting clean lines down her cheeks. "My name's Caleb Holt," he said softly. "I'm 37. I ride for the ranch east of the river." "Why?" she asked. "Because no one else did." Outside, a distant crack echoed. A rifle shot. Caleb's head snapped up. That's too close. Fear cleared her mind. Who would be shooting? Men who don't leave witnesses. He stood, already moving. "We have to go. Now." She looked at the shack, at the dress, at the life that had never begun. Leaving felt like another death. Staying would be the last. "Can you ride?" he asked. "I'll try." "That'll have to do." He lifted her onto the horse, settled behind her, reins tight. The animals shifted, uneasy, as they rode. The cold bit harder, the world narrowing to motion and breath. Eleanor clung to the saddle horn, vision blurring. Another shot rang out, closer. Caleb urged the horse faster. "You're safe," he said, though she felt his tension. "Just stay awake." The night rushed past. Wind tore tears from her eyes. Her strength ebbed. The plane spun. She thought she heard men shouting, thought she felt the horse stumble, thought she was falling. Then nothing. She drifted between darkness and sound, aware of warmth at her back, of Caleb's arm holding her steady. When she woke fully, firelight danced against rock. They lay hidden in a shallow ravine, the storm howling above them. Caleb knelt nearby, tending the fire, his face drawn. "You're alive," he said. "So are you. For now." She pushed herself up, weak but present. They followed. Not close enough. He met her eyes. "But they will." Eleanor nodded. Fear lived in her bones. But beneath it something new stirred. Motion. Choice. She was no longer waiting. "Then we keep moving," she said. A small smile touched his mouth. "That's the idea." Above them, snow fell steady, indifferent. Eleanor stared into flames and felt warmth spread, not just through her body, but somewhere deeper. Christmas Eve was still cruel, the frontier still hard. But for the first time since she arrived, she was not alone, and she was moving toward something instead of waiting to die. Eleanor woke to motion and pain braided together, the horse's gait jarring her bones, the cold gnawing of the blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. Dawn had not yet broken. The sky was a dull iron color, heavy with more snow. Caleb rode behind her, one arm firm around her middle, the other steady on the reins. His presence was solid, unyielding, like the land itself. She drew a breath and tasted smoke, snow, and fear. "You're awake," he said quietly. "For now," she answered. Her voice sounded small, but it was there. That mattered. They rode hard through a cut of land where the wind screamed overhead and could not quite reach them. Caleb turned the horse off the open plain and into scrub and broken ground, where hooves left less of a story behind. Eleanor understood without asking. Men hunted women like her for reasons they never bothered to explain. The frontier did not ask permission before taking what it wanted. By mid-morning, her strength faltered. Hunger clawed back, sharper than before. Caleb stopped beneath a stand of bare cottonwoods and slid down, steadying her as she dismounted. He handed her a heel of bread and a strip of dried meat. She ate slowly, forcing herself to chew, watching his face as he scanned the horizon. "Who are they?" she asked. "Men who know you're alone," he said. "That's enough." They reached the trading post before noon, a low building hunched against the cold, smoke leaking from its chimney. Caleb hesitated, jaw tight, then pushed the door open. Inside, warmth struck hard, thick with tobacco and sweat. 3 men turned. One, heavy set with a scarred cheek, stared at Eleanor too long. "Well now," he said, "thought you'd be dead by Christmas." Caleb stepped forward. "She's with me?" The man laughed. "That so?" She owes for supplies. Eleanor felt the room tighten. Caleb's hand moved. The sound of a rifle cocking cut through everything. A shot cracked, wood splintered. Another followed. Caleb fired once, precise. The scar man fell. The others scattered. Eleanor's ears rang. Caleb seized her hand and dragged her out as shouting rose behind them. They fled on horseback, snow churning beneath pounding hooves. A bullet tore past. Another struck flesh. Caleb grunted, but did not slow. Only when they reached broken hills did he stop, blood darkening his coat. Night closed and early. Caleb's wound bled freely, and Eleanor pressed her hands against it, panic sharp in her chest. She tore cloth, bound it tight, remembered things her mother once taught her. He watched her work, pale but steady. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I do," she answered, surprising herself. They moved again before dawn, slower now. Caleb leaned heavier on the saddle. Eleanor rode ahead at times, guiding the horse, watching for signs of pursuit. The land was cruel, but it was honest. She learned to read it. By the third day, she no longer shook when she held a rifle. That night, wolves came. Their howls rose, circling, patient. Caleb loaded the rifle with careful hands. Eleanor stood beside him, heart hammering. Fire low. The first wolf rushed. A shot rang out. Another followed. The pack retreated, yellow eyes fading into dark. Eleanor realized her hands were steady. She was still alive. They reached the river at dusk, swollen and cracking with ice. Behind them, riders crested the ridge, 5 silhouettes against the sky. Caleb cursed softly. "I'll draw them off," he said. "No," Eleanor said. The word came firm. "I won't be left again." The ice groaned beneath the horses' weight as they crossed, water surging black and cold. A shot rang. Ice shattered. Eleanor screamed as the horse stumbled. Caleb hauled her free, dragging her onto solid ground as the current clawed at them. The riders reined in, unwilling to follow. They lay gasping, soaked, shaking alive. The river appeared, dark and swollen, ice glinting on the fading dusk light. Caleb's horse hesitated at the edge. Eleanor's hands were numb, but she gripped the saddle horn, jaw tight. Behind them, distant riders spurred, their shadows stretching over the snow. Caleb leaned close. Thin ice. We cross fast. The horse plunged forward. Ice cracked beneath their hooves, water splashing around. Eleanor pressed against Caleb, heart pounding. A shot rang out from the ridge, harmless, but startling. Snow whipped against them, sharp and cold. Halfway across, the ice groaned. Caleb steadied the horse, urging it forward, guiding Eleanor. Another fissure opened, but solid ground was just ahead. With a final effort, the horse landed safely on the opposite bank. Breath heaving, soaked and shivering, Eleanor looked at Caleb. He nodded, eyes scanning the ridge where the riders hesitated. The river had slowed their pursuers. "We moved toward the ranch," he said. Eleanor nodded, clutching the reins. Together, they rode toward the hills, exhausted but alive, the final stretch ahead. The river had not forgiven them. Ice grown under hoof and foot, black water gaping below like a mouth waiting to swallow the careless. Eleanor's fingers were numb, her legs trembling. Every muscle screamed. Yet she clung to the horse, trusting Caleb's strength behind her. He pressed against her back, one arm steadying her, the other on the reins. The wind tore at their faces, slicing through soaked clothing, carrying with it the distant echoes of pursuit. Caleb's eyes, pale and sharp at 37, scanned every ridge, every shadow. The riders behind them had halted at the riverbank, uncertain. They had not crossed, their horses balking at the ice. "Keep moving," he said, voice low but firm. No room for argument. Eleanor's throat tightened. She wanted to ask 100 questions. Why them? Why now? But each one was lost to the roar of the wind. The horse lurched over a thin stretch of ice. Eleanor's heart pounded as the surface cracked beneath them, water sluicing up the hooves. A rider fired. The bullet struck a tree trunk near enough to shake the snow from its branches. Caleb cursed softly, urging the horse faster. Eleanor pressed herself against him, trusting him entirely. The current ripped at the horse's legs. Ice shards struck both of them. Every step was a battle. "Almost there," he yelled over the storm, and Eleanor felt a flicker of hope. She had been on the edge for weeks, but now she realized survival had become a rhythm, a choice, a defiance. She gritted her teeth, gripping the horn of the saddle. The final stretch loomed, rocks and shallows where solid ground returned. Horses slid, calves burned, but at last they landed on the opposite bank. Caleb slid from the saddle, pulling Eleanor down gently. They fell into snow together, gasping, drenched, but alive. Behind them, the riders reconsidered. The river had been the barrier they needed. They did not follow. Silence returned, heavier now, yet quieter, as if the land itself had acknowledged the pair. Eleanor sat up, trembling, hair plastered with snow. Caleb checked her over, wiping ice from her cheeks. "You did well," he said quietly, but the edge in his voice betrayed exhaustion and worry. "This isn't over, but we made it." She nodded, shivering but steadier now. The sense of helplessness that had haunted her since the first night in the shack ebbed slightly. She had survived. She had ridden, fired, bled, and endured, and she had not been left behind. The frontier had tested her, and she had answered. They made their way slowly toward the hills where Caleb's small ranch crouched under a rise. Smoke rose from a single chimney, thin and pale against the gray sky. It was modest, weathered, unremarkable, but it promised warmth. Eleanor could feel it in her bones before she saw it. The end of the flight, at least for now. The final confrontation was not quiet. As they neared the ranch, a single rider appeared on a ridge, watching, calculating. Caleb's hand went to the rifle, Eleanor following instinctively. Her body had remembered every moment of the wolf attack, the river, the trading post. She raised her own weapon, teeth clenched, fingers steady. "Stay behind me," Caleb said. The tone was not a request. Eleanor flinched at first, but then allowed herself to trust him fully. The man on the ridge spurred his horse, shouting, a rifle rising. Caleb fired first, precise and controlled. Eleanor's own shot rang out shortly after, echoing off the hills. Dust rose. The rider faltered, and another appeared behind him. The skirmish was swift, chaotic, and merciless. Caleb moved like a shadow, every shot measured, every breath deliberate. Eleanor fired again, her aim unsteady at first, then steadying with every heartbeat. The men behind the first rider hesitated, then fled. Silence descended again, heavier, almost sacred. Eleanor's hands shook as she lowered the rifle. Caleb placed a firm hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "That's it," he said. "They won't be back." They approached the ranch together, cautious, still tense. The door opened before them as though the land itself had expected them. Inside, warmth enveloped Eleanor immediately, the smell with smoke and cooked meat filling her senses. She froze at first, unprepared for comfort. Caleb set her down gently, helping her remove the wet layers of clothing. "You can stay," he said quietly, almost as if he were offering her a choice she had not dared to consider. "Or go. This time it's your choice." Eleanor looked around the modest interior, at the small fire, the rough-hewn furniture, and the man who had risked everything to save her. Her pride had been shattered and rebuilt through frost, fear, and fire. She had endured the frontier and emerged changed. She stepped closer to Caleb, letting the warmth seep into her bones. For the first time, she understood what survival meant. Not simply enduring, but choosing, acting, living. Tears she had not permitted herself flowed freely, carving tracks through the soot and grime of weeks. Caleb offered a small smile, not triumphant, but steady and sure. She placed her hand on his, feeling the solid strength behind it, the quiet reassurance of someone who had also faced the wilderness and survived. Outside, the snow had softened. Dawn broke pale and gray over the hills. Eleanor looked at the world anew, understanding that the frontier would always be indifferent, harsh, and unyielding, but she had learned to meet it without fear. In that moment, Eleanor's journey, from a starving, abandoned bride to a woman capable of survival, courage, and choice, reached a tentative peace. She did not need the past, did not need the promise that had never come. She had Caleb, the land, and the knowledge that she could endure anything. The frontier had tested her, but she had answered, and as the fire warmed her fingers, she understood that Christmas Eve had not been a tragedy, but beginning, a brutal, beautiful, life-affirming start.